The crowd roared as Jake Martinez stood in the center of the grand arena. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Sweat dripped from his forehead onto the golden sand beneath his feet. Around him lay the defeated warriors from across the galaxy. The greatest fighters from 100 worlds had challenged him, and now they were all down. The Emperor of Zephyria Prime rose from his crystal throne. His blue skin gleamed under the arena lights. 4 arms spread wide as he spoke in a voice that echoed through the massive stadium. Behold the victor. The human has proven his strength against our finest warriors. Jake wiped blood from a cut on his arm. The last fight had been tough. A creature with metal claws and lightning speed had nearly gotten him. But Jake's training on Earth had prepared him for anything. He had learned to fight smart, not just hard. The arena floor began to change. Crystal walls rose from the sand, creating a new space. Soft lights appeared, and music filled the air. This was the ceremony Jake had heard about but never seen. The victor's reward was about to begin. As tradition demands, you may choose your prize, the Emperor announced. Any princess from the conquered worlds shall serve as your companion. Choose wisely, human. A long line of beings walked onto the arena floor. Jake had never seen anything like them. Each princess was more amazing than the last. They moved with grace and power that made the air itself seem to bend around them. Princess Zara came first. She was from the Silicon Collective. Her body was made of living crystal that glowed with inner fire. Energy danced around her fingers like tiny lightning bolts. When she looked at Jake, he felt the hair on his arms stand up from the electrical field around her. The crowd whispered in awe. She could power entire cities with a thought. Next came Princess Vex of the Shadow Realm. She was hard to look at directly. Her form seemed to shift between solid and shadow. Dark matter swirled around her like a living cape. Reality bent where she stood, making the air look twisted and strange. She had destroyed entire armies by pulling them into pocket dimensions. Her cold eyes studied Jake with interest. Princess Zara of the Crystal Dynasty walked forward with steps that changed the ground beneath her feet. The arena floor turned to diamond with each footfall. She could reshape reality itself, turning thoughts into solid matter. Her golden hair moved without wind, each strand alive with creative force. Entire worlds had been rebuilt by her will, alone. One by one, more princesses appeared. Each had powers that could level mountains or create new stars. They represented the peak of their species, chosen for their incredible abilities and perfect beauty. The crowd cheered for each one, calling out their names and great deeds. Jake watched them all with growing unease. These beings were amazing, but something felt wrong about this whole ceremony. They stood like prizes to be won, not people to be met. Their faces showed no joy, only duty and resignation. At the very end of the line stood a figure that made Jake stop and stare. She was different from all the others. While the other princesses glowed with power, this one seemed almost to fade into the background. Her skin had a soft green tint, like leaves in spring sunlight. Tiny points of light flickered under her skin in slow patterns. She wore simple clothes made from what looked like woven grass. And finally, Princess Luna of Verdania, the Emperor said with barely hidden mockery in his voice. From the dying plant world. The crowd laughed. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. Princess Luna kept her eyes down, clearly used to this treatment. Her shoulders shook slightly, but she stood straight. Jake had heard about Verdania. It had been a beautiful world covered in forests and gardens. The people there lived in harmony with nature for thousands of years. Then something went wrong. The plants began to die. The air turned poisonous. Most of the population had fled to other worlds or died trying. The Emperor gestured grandly at the assembled princesses. "Choose, human. Take the greatest prize the galaxy can offer." Jake walked slowly down the line. Each princess stood taller as he approached, showing off their powers. Princess Zara made lightning dance between her fingers. Princess Vex opened a small portal to another dimension. Princess Zara created a flower of pure diamond that sparkled like captured starlight. But Jake kept walking until he stood in front of Princess Luna. Up close, he could see the sadness in her large green eyes. The lights under her skin pulsed, faster, which he somehow knew meant fear or nervousness. The arena fell silent. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. "Surely you jest, human. This weak creature has no powers worth claiming." Jake turned to face the crowd. His voice carried clearly in the sudden quiet. "I choose Princess Luna of Verdania." The silence broke into chaos. Alien nobles shouted in confusion and anger. The other princesses looked shocked. Some seemed insulted that he had passed them over. Princess Zara's energy flared with what looked like wounded pride. "You mock this ceremony," the Emperor snarled. "She cannot even survive without special conditions. She has no weapons, no armies, no power to offer you." "That's exactly why I choose her," Jake said firmly. He turned back to Princess Luna, who stared at him with wide eyes. The light patterns under her skin swirled in colors he couldn't name. Slowly, carefully, Jake extended his hand toward her, palm up. "I'm not here to claim a prize," he said gently. "I'm asking if you'd be willing to work with me." Princess Luna looked at his offered hand, then up at his face. For the first time since entering the arena, she lifted her chin. The lights under. Her skin steadied into a warm golden glow. Very slowly, she placed her hand in his. The crowd erupted again, but Jake ignored them. He was looking at Princess Luna's face, seeing hope replace fear in her eyes. Something told him he had just made the most important choice of his life. The Emperor stood, his forearms crossed in displeasure. "So be it. The human has chosen. The ceremony is complete." As they walked from the arena together, Princess Luna spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft like wind through leaves. "Why did you choose me?" Jake looked down at her. "Because everyone else saw weakness where I saw someone worth knowing." The ship Frontier looked small next to the massive Zephyrian fleet, but it was home to Jake Martinez. As he led Princess Luna through the corridors, she moved carefully, like someone expecting to be told she didn't belong. Her green-tinted skin seemed to grow paler under the artificial lights. "These will be your quarters," Jake said, stopping at a door near his own cabin. The room inside was basic but clean. A bed, a desk, a small window showing the stars outside. Luna stood in the doorway, clearly confused. "I don't understand. Where am I supposed to serve?" "You're not here to serve anyone," Jake said. "This is your room, your space." She looked around. The small cabin like it was too good to be true. The light patterns under her skin flickered in what Jake was learning meant surprise. But the other warriors who won prizes, they kept their companions in special holding areas. Jake felt sick. "You're not a prize, Luna. You're a person." Her large green eyes studied his face. You really mean that? I do. Jake leaned against the doorframe. What do you need to be comfortable? Special food? Different air? Luna's bioluminescent. Patterns shifted to softer colors. The air here is too thin for me. My people need more carbon dioxide and moisture. And I need soil contact for at least a few hours each day, or I get weak. Then we'll fix that. Jake activated his communicator. Chief Engineer Brown, I need you in Section C. We're making some changes. An hour later, Engineer Brown arrived, with 2 crew members carrying equipment. Luna watched nervously as they began installing air recyclers and humidity controls. We can convert the storage room next door into a garden space, Brown suggested, checking readings on his scanner. Proper soil, growing lights, whatever atmospheric mix she needs. Do it, Jake said immediately. Luna stepped forward, her patterns now glowing brighter. You would change your ship for me? It's not just my ship, Jake said. It's your home, too, if you want it to be. While the crew worked, Jake and Luna sat in the main lounge. She moved carefully, still not used to the lower gravity. Through the viewport, they could see other ships in the fleet. Some carried the princesses who hadn't been chosen. Others held warriors heading home. Tell me about Verdania, Jake said. Luna's glow dimmed. It was beautiful once. We called it the Garden World. Every plant and tree was part of a great network. We could speak to the forests and they spoke back. The whole planet was alive in ways other species couldn't understand. What happened? Poison in the sky. Luna's hands clenched in her lap. It started small, a few plants getting sick, then more and more. The toxins were unlike anything in nature. They attacked the very chemistry that let plants grow. We tried everything our science knew, but it wasn't enough. Jake listened as she described watching her world die. Forests turning black, rivers running with dead plant matter. The air itself becoming toxic to breathe. My parents sent me away when I was young, Luna continued. To learn about other worlds, they said, but really to keep me safe. By the time I was old enough to return, there was nothing left to save. I'm sorry, Jake said, meaning it. The galaxy called us weak because we couldn't fight back, Luna said bitterly. But how do you fight something in the air itself? Something too small to see? Over the next few days, Jake watched Luna slowly relax aboard the ship. The garden room Brown had built worked perfectly. Luna spent hours there, her hands in real soil for the first time in years. Her bioluminescent patterns became brighter and more complex. One evening, Jake found her in the garden talking to a small tree they had planted. She wasn't speaking aloud, but the leaves on the tree moved like they were responding to something. Can you really talk to plants? Jake asked. Luna looked up, slightly embarrassed. Not talk exactly. We share chemical signals. Plants communicate through their root systems and airborne compounds. My people evolved to understand and join those conversations. She touched the tree's trunk. Immediately, the leaves rustled, and Jake could swear he smelled something like fresh rain. This little tree is happy, Luna said. It likes the soil and the lights. But it's lonely. It wants to connect to other plants. Jake watched in amazement as Luna's skin patterns changed, becoming more complex. The tree's leaves responded, growing greener and fuller even as he watched. That's incredible, he breathed. The galaxy thinks it's useless, Luna said sadly. What good is talking to plants when enemies come with ships and weapons? But Jake was thinking about something else. Luna, you said the poison on your world. was unlike anything in nature. How do you know that? I could taste it in the chemical signals. Luna's patterns shifted to what Jake now recognized as concern. Every plant that died sent out warnings. The signatures were all wrong. No natural toxin works that way. Could you recognize those signatures again, if you encountered them somewhere else? Luna nodded slowly. Once you know a chemical pattern, you never forget it. Why? Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. Because if someone poisoned your world on purpose, they might try it again somewhere else. The next day brought news that changed everything. A message came through the fleet's communication system. 3 more worlds had reported mysterious plant diseases, crops failing, forests dying, the same pattern that had destroyed Verdania. Luna went very still when she heard the report. Her skin patterns turned deep red, something Jake had never seen before. "It's happening again," she whispered. "How can you be sure?" "I can smell it." Luna stood up quickly. Even through the ship's recycled air, even across space. That chemical signature. It's the same poison that killed my world. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. Someone is using the same weapon. But who? And why? Luna's patterns were cycling rapidly through different colors now, showing her agitation. Jake thought about the ceremony where he had chosen Luna. All those powerful princesses with their amazing abilities. Weapons that could destroy fleets or reshape worlds. But none of them could detect a microscopic poison spread through the air of entire planets. None of them except Luna. "I think," Jake said slowly. "I'm starting to understand why you were really the strongest choice after all." Luna looked at him with hope and fear mixed in her green eyes. The tree in her garden rustled its leaves as if it could sense the importance of this moment. Outside the ship, the stars looked different somehow. Less friendly, more dangerous. Jake realized their real fight was just beginning, and the enemy they faced couldn't be defeated with energy weapons or reality-bending powers. They needed someone who could speak the language of life itself. The reports kept coming in, each one worse than the last. Jake stood in the Frontier's command center, watching news feeds from across the galaxy. 7 worlds now showed the same symptoms. Plants dying in patterns that made no natural sense. Entire ecosystems collapsing within weeks. Luna sat nearby, her skin patterns shifting through deep reds and purples. She had been like this for days, ever since the first reports came in. Jake had learned that these colors meant she was sensing something that frightened her. "The smell is getting stronger," she said quietly. "Even from here, even through space. Whatever is causing this is spreading faster." Captain Stevens, Jake's second-in-command, shook his head as he read the latest report. "Kepler-7 is completely dead. Every plant, every piece of vegetation, even the bacteria in the soil are gone." Jake felt sick. Kepler-7 had been home to 50 million people. They were evacuating to other worlds, but where could they go if this poison kept spreading? "The Galactic Council is calling an emergency meeting," Stevens continued. "Every available ship is being ordered to the capital." "Good," Jake said. "Maybe now they'll listen." But Luna made a sound like a whisper of wind through dying leaves. "They won't believe what I have to tell them. The journey to the capital took 3 days. During that time, 2 more worlds reported the same mysterious plague. Luna spent most of her time in the garden room, her hands deep in soil, trying to make sense of the chemical signals she was detecting across impossible distances. Jake found her there on the second night, sitting under her small tree. Her patterns were dimmer than usual, and she looked exhausted. "How far can you sense these chemical signatures?" he asked. Farther than I ever thought possible, Luna admitted. My people could usually communicate with plants across a few miles, at most. But this poison is so strong, so wrong, that I can smell it from systems away. She touched the tree's trunk, and Jake saw its leaves shiver. The plants that are dying are all trying to warn each other. They're sending out distress signals that carry across space itself. I'm hearing the death screams of entire worlds. Jake knelt beside her. What else can you sense? Anything that might tell us where it's coming from? Luna closed her eyes and placed both hands flat on the soil. Her patterns began to cycle slowly through different colors. The chemical signature has layers. The base toxin is artificial, definitely not natural. But there are traces of other compounds mixed in. What kind of traces? Metals that don't exist in normal solar systems. Organic compounds from creatures that breathe methane instead of oxygen. And something else. Luna's eyes snapped open. Something that feels very old and very angry. The capital world of Zephyria Prime was in chaos when they arrived. Ships from every corner of the galaxy filled the orbital stations. The Galactic Council had called for every species to send representatives. Jake had never seen so many different kinds of beings in one place. But for all their diversity, they all looked afraid. The council chamber was a massive crystal dome that could hold thousands of delegates. Jake and Luna found seats in the section reserved for humans, though they were the only ones there. Most other species had sent large delegations. Jake and Luna looked very small in the vast space. Emperor Vex, leader of the council, called for order. His 4 arms gestured to a holographic display showing the affected worlds. The crisis spreads faster than our ability to contain it. 9 worlds now show complete ecological collapse. Princess Zara stood up in the energy being section. Our finest scientists have analyzed the dead zones. The toxin appears to be artificially created, but we cannot identify its source or composition. Our reality shapers cannot reverse the damage, added Princess Zara. Whatever this poison is, it exists outside normal physics. We cannot simply reshape it away. Jake watched Luna grow smaller in her seat as delegate after delegate admitted failure. The most powerful beings in the galaxy were helpless against this invisible enemy. Finally, Jake stood up. I request permission to speak. The chamber fell, silent. Emperor Vex looked annoyed. The human victor wishes to address the council. Not just me, Jake said firmly. Princess Luna of Verdania has information you need to hear. A wave of laughter rolled through the chamber. Several delegates made mocking comments about the weak princess and the foolish human choice. But Emperor Vex raised a hand for silence. Very well, let the plant speaker share her wisdom. Luna stood slowly, her patterns flickering with nervousness. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear. This toxin destroyed my world first. I have been sensing its signature for years. And what does your plant whispering tell you? Princess Zara asked mockingly. Luna's patterns flared brighter. That this poison was created by the Void Reapers. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in disbelief and anger. The Void Reapers were a legend, a nightmare species that supposedly existed in the spaces between galaxies. They were said to hate all life and seek to consume everything. Impossible, Emperor Vex declared. The Void Reapers were destroyed centuries ago. No, Luna said, her voice growing stronger. They were hiding. The chemical signature I sense carries traces of their biology, compounds that could only come from beings that live in absolute cold and darkness. She gestured to the holographic display. Look at the pattern of infection. It's not random. The affected worlds form a spiral leading toward the galactic rim, toward the empty space where the Void Reapers once lived. Jake stepped forward to support her. Luna can detect chemical signatures across interstellar distances. If she says this is connected to the Void Reapers, we need to take that seriously. Even if that were true, Princess Vex said, how does it help us? The Void Reapers are supposedly immune to all conventional weapons. They exist in the dark matter itself. Luna's patterns suddenly shifted to the deep red of fear. Because this isn't their final attack. It's preparation. They're sterilizing worlds to remove all life before they move in. The chemical signature is getting stronger because they're getting closer. How much time do we have? Emperor Vex asked quietly. Luna closed her eyes, feeling for the distant chemical traces. Days, maybe a week. They're already at the edge of our galaxy. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Jake looked around at all the powerful beings who had seemed so mighty in the arena. Their energy weapons and reality-bending abilities would be useless against an enemy that could kill entire worlds with invisible poison. But Luna stood straighter, her patterns beginning to show new colors Jake had never seen before. Bright greens and golds that seemed to pulse with determination. There might be a way to fight them, she said quietly. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. The weak princess from the dying world suddenly had everyone's attention. But it would require trusting in the kind of power this galaxy has forgotten, Luna continued. The power of cooperation, of growth instead of destruction, of healing instead of conquest. Jake felt a surge of hope. Luna might look fragile, but there was something in her voice now that sounded like strength beyond anything he had heard in the arena. The galaxy was about to learn what real power looked like. The council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as Luna stood before the holographic displays. Her skin patterns had stabilized into colors Jake had never seen before, deep golds and greens that seemed to pulse with purpose. She looked small, next to the towering alien delegates, but her voice carried clearly. The Void Reapers think they understand life, Luna began. They see it as something to be destroyed, eliminated, consumed, but they're wrong about what life really is. Princess. Zara leaned forward in her crystal seat. Explain yourself, plant speaker. How can gardening defeat an enemy our weapons cannot touch? Luna's patterns brightened. Because life doesn't just exist in individual plants or animals. It's a network. On my world, every tree was connected to every other tree through root systems and chemical signals. When one part of the forest was threatened, the whole forest could respond. She gestured to the display showing the infected worlds. The Void Reaper's poison works by breaking those connections. It isolates each plant, each organism, making them die alone. But what if we could reconnect them? What if we could create a network so strong that their poison couldn't break it? Emperor Vex's 4 arms crossed skeptically. You speak of fantasy. How could plants across different star systems possibly connect? Through spores, Luna said simply. Modified spores that carry genetic information and chemical signals across space itself. My people discovered this was possible centuries ago, but we never tried it on such a scale. Jake stepped forward. What kind of scale are you talking about? Luna's patterns shifted to show excitement mixed with fear. Every world in the galaxy, every plant, every ecosystem connected in one vast network. A living web that could detect and respond to threats instantly. The chamber erupted in arguments. Delegates shouted that it was impossible, insane, too dangerous to attempt. But Jake noticed that some of the older, wiser leaders were listening, carefully. Chancellor Moss of the Tree Worlds raised a branch-like arm. Even if such a thing were possible, it would require genetic samples from every inhabited world. The logistics alone would take years. "We don't have years," Luna said urgently. "We have days. But there's another way." She walked to the central display and touched it. Somehow the hologram responded to her, showing new patterns that looked like growing vines spreading across a star map. "I don't need samples from every world," Luna explained. "I need samples from key worlds, planets with the strongest, most diverse ecosystems. Then the network can spread on its own, adapting to each new environment it reaches." "And where would you create this network?" Princess Zara asked. "What world could serve as the central hub?" Luna's patterns dimmed for a moment. "Verdania, my dying world. It still has the root systems and soil chemistry needed. The infrastructure is already there, waiting." Jake felt his chest tighten. "Luna, going back to Verdania could kill you. The toxins there are exactly what I need to understand. How to fight the Void Reapers," Luna finished. "I have to go back, Jake. It's the only way." The debate continued for hours. Many delegates thought Luna's plan was madness. Princess Zara argued that they should focus on building bigger weapons. Princess Vex wanted to try hiding in pocket dimensions until the threat passed. But as reports came in of more worlds falling to the plague, even the skeptics began to listen. The Void Reapers were only days away, and conventional defenses had failed completely. Finally, Emperor Vex called for a vote. "All in favor of attempting the plant network defense?" Hands, claws, tentacles, and energy fields rose throughout the chamber. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. "Very well," the Emperor declared. "Princess Luna will have whatever resources she needs. But know this: if you fail, there may not be time for another plan." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Ships from every corner of the galaxy brought soil samples, seeds, and cuttings to Verdania. Luna worked without rest, her patterns growing brighter and more complex as she prepared for the greatest undertaking of her life. Jake stayed by her side as she worked in the poisoned soil of her home world. She had to wear a breathing mask, but she insisted on direct contact with the contaminated earth. "I can feel them," she said as she knelt in what had once been a great forest. "All the plants that died here. Their chemical signals are still in the soil, still crying out warnings about the poison." "Is it helping?" Jake asked. "Yes." Luna's hands glowed as she worked, somehow drawing life from the dead ground. "I'm learning how the Void Reaper toxin works, how to build resistance to it, how to turn it back on itself." Around them, other beings worked to set up the equipment Luna needed. Scientists from a dozen species had volunteered to help, though many still doubted the plan would work. Dr. Green from Earth worked alongside Professor Bark from the Tree Worlds to install genetic modification equipment. Engineer Brown had designed special greenhouse domes that could protect the delicate seedlings Luna was creating. "The spores are ready," Luna announced on the third day. She held up a small container filled with what looked like golden dust. "Each one carries the genetic code for network formation and toxin resistance." "How do we spread them?" Jake asked. "The same way nature always has," Luna smiled. "We let the wind carry them." That night, as the Void Reaper fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system, Luna stood in the center of her newly created garden. The plants around her glowed with the same patterns as her skin, all pulsing in rhythm like a vast heartbeat. She opened the container of spores and blew gently. The golden dust swirled up into the night air, caught by wind currents that would carry it around the planet and eventually into space itself. "It started," she said quietly. Jake watched the spores disappear into the darkness. "How long before we know if it's working?" Luna's patterns showed uncertainty. "The network needs time to grow and spread, but the Void Reapers won't wait." She looked up at the enemy ships gathering in orbit. "We're about to find out if life is stronger than death." In the distance, the first Void Reaper pods began descending toward the planet's surface. They looked like drops of liquid darkness against the stars. Soon they would release their ultimate poison, designed to sterilize all life in the galaxy. But Luna stood straighter, her patterns blazing with determination. Around her, the plants she had awakened began to glow brighter, sharing strength with each other and with her. The real battle was about to begin, and it would be fought not with weapons or energy, but with the oldest and most powerful force in the universe: the will to grow, to connect, and to live. The Void Reaper ships descended like drops of liquid night against the stars. Jake stood beside Luna in her glowing garden on Verdania, watching death approach their world. The enemy vessels were nothing like the sleek ships of the galaxy's civilizations. They looked organic and wrong, as if they were made from crystallized darkness itself. Luna's skin patterns had changed completely. Instead of the simple bioluminescence Jake had first seen, complex networks of light now covered her entire body. She looked like a living constellation, each point of light connected to every other in patterns that hurt to follow with human eyes. "They're releasing the poison now," she said, her voice strangely distant. "I can taste it in the air currents. It's stronger than what they used before. They want to make sure nothing survives this time." Jake felt helpless as the first clouds of toxin began settling over the landscape. In the distance, he could see the skeletal remains of Verdania's great forests, and he wondered if Luna's plan would work or if they would all die here together. Then, something impossible happened. The dead trees began to glow. At first, it was just a faint shimmer in the bark. But the light spread quickly, racing along branches that had been lifeless for years. The glow jumped from tree to tree, following old root networks that still connected beneath the poisoned soil. "It's working," Luna whispered, and Jake could hear wonder in her voice. "The network is activating." The spores reached the old connections and awakened them. Across the planet, dead forests came back to life. Not the slow regrowth of natural healing, but something far more dramatic. The plants weren't just resisting the Void Reaper poison, they were transforming it, breaking it down into harmless compounds and using the energy to fuel their own resurrection. "How is this possible?" Jake asked. Luna's patterns blazed brighter. "Life finds a way, Jake. It always has. The Void Reapers think they understand biology, but they only know death. They never learned how living things can adapt and change and grow stronger." The golden spores Luna had released were spreading beyond Verdania now. Jake could see them through the ship scanners, carried by solar winds and gravitational currents, to other worlds. Wherever they landed, the same transformation began. Dead plants awakened, connected, and fought back. But the real shock came when the spores reached worlds that weren't dead yet. On Kepler 7, where the evacuation was still happening, forests suddenly blazed with new light. The spores connected with healthy ecosystems and supercharged them. Plants that had taken decades to grow reached full maturity in hours. Crops that should have fed thousands now fed millions. The communication network Luna had created allowed every plant in the galaxy to share information instantly. When a toxin appeared on one world, every other world immediately knew how to fight it. When a useful mutation developed somewhere, it spread everywhere within hours. Jake watched the reports, flooding in from across the galaxy. World after world reporting miraculous recoveries. Ecosystems not just healing but becoming stronger than ever before. "The network is learning," Luna said, and her voice now seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Every challenge makes it smarter. Every attack teaches it new defenses. The Void Reaper fleet tried to adapt. They released new poisons, stronger toxins, biological weapons that had never been seen before. But the network was ready for them. Plants across the galaxy shared immunity faster than the attackers could create new threats." Then Luna did something that changed everything. She placed her hands on the soil of Verdania and reached out through the network to every plant on every world. Her consciousness touched millions of different ecosystems, billions of individual organisms, all connected in one vast web of life. "I can see them all," she said, her voice filled with awe. "Every forest, every garden, every single blade of grass. They're all part of me now, and I'm part of them." Jake realized with shock that Luna wasn't just connected to the network. She had become its central intelligence. The supposedly weakest princess in the galaxy now controlled the largest and most powerful organism that had ever existed. The Void. Reapers seemed to sense the change. Their ships stopped releasing poisons and began attacking the plants directly with energy weapons. But that was their final mistake. Luna raised her hands, and across the galaxy, every plant responded. Vines erupted from the ground on 1,000 worlds, growing with impossible speed toward the Void Reaper ships. Trees launched seed pods like missiles. Flowers released clouds of spores that clogged enemy air filters and damaged their dark matter engines. The network didn't just defend, it struck back. On the capital world, Emperor Vex watched in amazement as the Void Reaper fleet began to retreat. "How are plants fighting spaceships?" "Because they're not just plants anymore," Jake said, understanding finally dawning. "Luna has turned every ecosystem in the galaxy into one massive organism. The most powerful living thing that ever existed." The retreat became a rout. Void Reaper ships that had seemed unstoppable were overwhelmed by attacks from every planet. They approached. Some tried to hide in the empty space between stars, but the network's spores had spread there too, carried by solar winds and cosmic radiation. There was nowhere in the galaxy the Void Reapers could hide from life itself. But Luna wasn't finished. Through the network, she spoke to every inhabited world at